Assalamualaikum everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bangladeshi Mathematicians Worldwide. In this episode, we're not going to talk about mathematical theories or equations. Rather, we're going to deeply delve into how mathematics is related to changing education system or questioning how the current affairs are going. And in general, in order to reform Bangladesh, mathematics is essential. And I'm proud to say that today's episode, we will be talking with none other than a prominent Bangladeshi mathematician, Professor Saleh Tanveer from Ohio State University in the US. Professor has been always active when it comes to engaging students from Bangladesh who are mathematical enthusiasts and who want to do something for the country, and has always been active questioning our current education system. So it's very exciting for me because personally, he has been my inspiration when it comes to mathematics. So, a warm welcome to you, Professor. Before we start, thank you so much for joining with us. And how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, yeah, I'm also, alhamdulillah, doing well. So before going to the actual questions, I wanted to know about your childhood back in Bangladesh, your school and college and life in general. How was it back in Bangladesh?
Yeah, I was born to a middle class family in ancient times by your standards. It was then East Pakistan, as you can imagine. I started schooling actually essentially in the third grade, because before that it was basically homeschooling because my father worked in Kushtia and then in Kaptai project. So there are not schools to our liking. So my mother basically took care of the schooling. And so when I joined in the third grade, I was at a disadvantage because before that, my father spent time in what was then West Pakistan. So when I first learned my language, it was in Urdu. So আমি বাংলায় যখন ক্লাস নিচ্ছি, আমি স্পিকিং লিটল বিট ইন বাংলায় যখন ক্লাস নেওয়া শুরু করলাম, তখন বাসায় পড়ছি ও আর রস্বই দীর্ঘই আর আজিমপুর কেজি স্কুল, যেটা পরে অগ্রণী বালিকা বিদ্যালয়, তারা পড়াচ্ছে ক্লাস থ্রিতে ফোরের বাংলা. It was a real difficult time for me. So it took about fifth grade or I should say sixth, seventh grade until I caught up and I started doing well. So the early years were rather difficult because I didn't like memorization at all. And the emphasis was on learning Bengali poem and English poem, recite them in class. And each time you couldn't do them, you were punished. So that wasn't a very pleasant experience. So I was not very much into school at all. So, yeah. So
So I
then,
wanted to know, yeah.
then I ended up my father, because he was getting transferred to different places, so he wanted my brother and me to end up in cadet college. So he ended up in Mirzapur Cadet College. So that's how my journey began. I mean, from that point onwards, I started doing much better. Yeah.
So when you were in cadet college, it was also when the Liberation War in 1971 was happening. So how was the time back then?
Yeah. So it was, of course, things were happening outside, and I was in my 10th grade, getting prepared for the SSC exam when the Liberation War started. So I was essentially at the stage. I was sitting at home basically. So in my personal life, I used that time to figure out what was going around. So I had ready access to a lot of books in a library. So I ended up, uh, reading a lot. And from that point onwards, I actually determined, because there was no internet or anything during that time. So I ended up learning about the world and what was taught abroad. And I had a objective way of figuring out where I was in terms of uh, knowing about myself. I could self-evaluate myself in terms of where I wanted to go. So that was important.
So I know that you chose the program in Dhaka University Physics Honors, even though you got into BUIT. I think most of the students they would choose BUIT. If it were me, I would have chosen BUIT. So what was the underlying factor that you chose Dhaka University?
Yeah, so during those times, it wasn't all that clear because BUET wasn't like the preferred institution for the first stop in my for the first top 10 in my uh, year of HSC. In fact, only one out of the top 10 ended up going to either BUET or medical. So, Dhaka University Physics Department was the destination for quite a few, uh, who did well. And physics, chemistry, in fact, economics, Dhaka University economics. So during those times, those fundamental subjects were prized, and the top students ended up going there. But it soon changed. Within about 2 years, all the top students were going to medical or Dhaka University. Yeah. But for me, the pressure was different. Pressure was because my father, my uncles, Amar Kalu, Chacha, a lot of them were engineers. And my brother was actually also at BUET. So there was this feeling that, okay, you wanted to be a professor, you want to do theoretical stuff, you can do electrical engineering and you can still do what you wanted to do, but you have the option to get a good job. Because from their angle, you study physics. That's what I studied in Dhaka University. There was no other option. So it seemed logical from their viewpoint, but I was bent on not doing physics. So that's how I ended up there.
Okay, so you were doing your classes at Dhaka University, but later on you transferred to Pomona College in the US with scholarship. So
Mhm.
back in those days, like were those like decisions very common to like transfer in the North American education system? How did you know about it?
So what happened is I spent a lot of time at United States Information Service. There was the what is now called the American Center, I think. I spent a lot of time looking at what was available. So what caught my eye was that what the top ranked universities and colleges in the US. So I got to know that besides the well-known universities, you had this liberal arts college, which were also among the most competitive institutions. So I ended up rather late applying the process. So even after 1 year, I started applying, and then besides the well-known places, the only place. So I ended up in Canada for about one semester. But then the place I went in Canada, Concordia, was not very good at that time. So it was a bit of a disappointment. So I rejuvenated my applications to US institutions. But all of them said, well, no, no, you have to wait another year. But I wanted to move out of Concordia right in the middle of the year. And the only schools which gave full scholarship in the middle of the year were University of Rochester, Pomona College. So those are the only two places where I got accepted, and I went to Pomona instead. Yeah. Mm.
Interesting. So when you ended up in Pomona, you also did like a double major, like physics and
Yeah.
math.
So it goes back to my experience at Concordia. I ended up after about two classes, my physics professor said you are too good for this class, so you go and go show up in a third year class. So third year, the methods of theoretical physics, and they were doing 4-year series and all these things. And I could do all the problems, but I didn't really know what I was doing. So in the sense of, there was this convergence in the mean and all these other concepts, which were mathematical, and I was very unsatisfied with the way physics professor taught us. So I ended up, when I came to Pomona College, after my first year, I ended up taking a lot more theoretical mathematics classes. So that's where I discovered, and this, I was always interested in math, but in high school, nobody told us that you could actually have a career in math. Even my math teachers didn't know that you could do research, in math. So this interest rejuvenated indirectly through physics, because when I was trying to study advanced physics, I found my only barrier was not knowing enough math. So that's what started my journey in math as well. Mhm.
So you also did your master's and also got into Caltech and did engineering. So I wanted
Yeah,
to know about,
so
yeah.
it was interesting because so while I could have graduated from Pomona in the middle of the year after, I lost a few months because of my numerous transfers. So instead of graduating in 78 December, which I could have, it occurred to me that what would I do in my 6 months? So I looked at the program of the sister school, Claremont Graduate University, at that time called Claremont Graduate School. So they had a joint master's bachelor's program. Uh, this was a year program, but I had so much advanced math already that I could finish it up by staying additional semester. And that's how I got my master's in math while being a double major in math and physics. Uh, so so that's so I had I wasn't sure which one I wanted to pursue, math or physics. So I came to Caltech applied math instead of the other options I had, partly because their department was very open. You could choose a advisor in physics, uh, or you could choose an advisor within the department. So I ended up taking, when I came to Caltech, a lot of graduate physics courses. I started a course with Richard Feynman and also Kip Thorne. Thorne in relativity and Feynman in applied quantum mechanics. So I ended up pursuing those areas to see if I wanted to do a thesis in those areas. So, but then I ended up doing a thesis with someone in our department in fluid dynamics. So that's how my journey started. But as I was taking courses in math and physics as well as in engineering, my father got very excited when I once told him that, uh, I'm taking so many classes in so many different subjects that if I wanted to, I could finish a degree in engineering soon. He got very excited because he couldn't get me to join BUET, and he said, "Oh, finish your master's in engineering." So even without at Caltech, even without going into the program, you could pick up a master's on the side by just doing some seminars in addition to courses. So that's what I did. So it was just to make my father happy. I wasn't particularly interested in being an engineer. Yeah. But
So
but
it's, yeah.
but one thing I should say is that because I had such a strong background in math and physics, it ended up being very easy. The engineering courses at Caltech were quite easy for me uh, after having gone through physics as well as engineering, as well as math. So math, in a sense, math is quite versatile because if you have that kind of training, you can actually, and some physics, if you have that kind of training, you could actually go to graduate school in many other disciplines, which is something people in Bangladesh probably don't know. Hmm.
Yeah. So, for in Bangladesh, like students rarely know the actual fun while doing math because of the country's rigid curriculum.
Mhm.
And few of them get the experiences of the actual joy of mathematics either by self-learning or participating at math Olympiads. And when some of them get lucky, they get full scholarships to study to do their undergrad in North America, and they eventually end up studying at North America because how much liberty you have, how many courses you can take, it's up to you. But when it comes to Bangladesh, it's very contrastive. You don't have that liberty. Even like when it comes to the textbook, the contents, the materials, the teaching methods, and the horrible pattern that is maintained in the university admission test, which honestly fail to acknowledge the true merit of a student. There are so many problems when it comes to Bangladeshi mathematics education system. So my question is, what do you think that people who are now in authority to reform Bangladeshi education system should focus on this field?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And in fact, rather than technical talks, which I gave in Bangladesh on numerous occasions, more recently I've been doing public talks on some of you may have seen in YouTube. And I actually addressed these question, namely that uh, what's in the admission test, please do not try to make it a race with time, and rather than you do insert some very try to measure the depth. And I've been saying that whoever Buet or Dhaka University or other universities, please address that. And I think among the curriculum, I think the Brack University, though they don't get the same quality students as Dhaka University, they're trying to actually have a much more sensible curriculum. The other problem is that, from what I understood, I don't know if this was your experience. I did see the Dhaka University students, all the ones that I came in contact, as far as they're trying to do join our university or apply for. They have a big gap, and the gap is that they don't have enough theoretical courses. And uh, even if you want to do something which is quite applied, most of the programs that we have, at least in North America, they actually require you to have analysis at the graduate level and PhD level. But if you haven't seen any like fundamentals of analysis and functional analysis at the undergraduate level, at a deep level, rather than just one course out of five, six different courses, I mean that's what I looked at the Dhaka curriculum. They have like they teach you relativity or quantum mechanics and all these things, and I had actually proposed that instead of flooding people with so many courses, why don't you take some course and teach them deeply? Like, for instance, start, uh, analysis, give them a lot of problems, not just test them out on some of the ones that you did in class or the ones in the books. Give enough practice so that they get better and they get more skilled. And one way to motivate students, which is something I do here in the US, is you see, like when I teach linear algebra to to engineering students, I tell them that look, some of the proofs you may not care, and because your interests are in engineering, but the ability to reason from point A to point B through a sequence of logical through a sequence of logical steps is a skill, and this skill transfers to any other area of human endeavor because you are thinking logically how you actually take from what you know to where you want to end up. This thinking may not be directly related to what you're interested in, but subconsciously it does mature your thinking. And that's something that I also tell my Dhaka University colleagues, that try to get a curriculum which is more in line to the way that you have in the US or in North America, because it will actually, you'll get your students to come to, top universities. So we have many bright kids. Um, Sorry, I'm calling them kids, but relative to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have very bright people entering in Dhaka University, relative to the other departments, probably not as bright as they should have be, uh, but still bright, but they are being underserved because they're not being prepared to do the best they could. And part of the problem is the curriculum. And this is partly in, at least in part, due to a lot of Dhaka. There is a wish for Dhaka University professor. Some of them got trained in relativity. Some of them got trained in quantum mechanics. Some of them got trained in fluid mechanics. Some of them got trained in math biology. So they want to stuff all this thing in the undergraduate curriculum, because then they have their favorite course that they want to teach. But that's not quite serving. You could have a few electives there, but in the fundamental core curriculum, you must have enough courses in fundamental mathematics. That's what I mean, you could have, like, in your senior year, electives, and then you can teach them in your thesis stuff that have to do more with applications. But in the core program, you have to have enough fundamental mathematics. And this is something which I have been telling people. Yeah. Sorry for a long answer to your
No,
question.
that was very greatly answered. And so most people say that math is the language of the universe. For me, I think math is a tool that taught me to question or address a problem. It can be personal, social, or global. So, I think math is the very fundamental source where we actually learn how to observe problems in our society or solve them. So do you think that when it comes to on academic basis, Bangladeshi students are lacking that skill? Because when we observe the questions in the board exams, they are either directly printed out from the textbook or they're similar to the problems that they already have been practicing, which the questions lack enough creativity. So what do you think that when it comes to growing confidence in Bangladeshi students, the education system is the reason that they don't have that skill. Do you think that?
Yeah, I mean, so here is the conundrum in terms of making changes in the Bangladeshi educational system. You have different audience, you have different purpose. So it's a multi-purpose kind of education. So if you try to do it with a common denominator for all the audience, then by design it has to be much more uh, fact oriented, because you want them to know some basic facts. However, there is also what is even in this fundamental skills, what is not realized is that you also need to develop basic skills. And here is the issue. If you have lots of kids who are used to taking shortcuts through memorization over a prolonged period, and then all of a sudden you require of them to think in a bit different way, then you obviously have resistance. Resistance comes both from the students as well as the teachers, because the teachers are not quite used to adjusting themselves with the new syllabus. So therefore, in my way of thinking, one has to have this is where I want to go. Let's have this 10-year period by which we'll move the education system in that way, slowly and gradually, to let people actually uh, uh, to let the system adjust to these new requirements. Also, the students develop themselves with these expectations. So slowly and gradually, you move towards that direction. But we had this knee-jerk changes. All of a sudden, everything is changed. And then what happened is you don't have the necessary people in place to impart that kind of education. So you end up with a fiasco, and all this experimentation leads you to uh, a worse end than what you started out with.
So, in this modern era, we know that how mathematics is everywhere when it comes to economics or policy making or any sort of social sciences research, math is also needed. So, we know for a fact that we need more mathematical careers. So, how to involve more students in mathematical careers in Bangladesh and ensure more funding opportunities when it comes to mathematical research? Like, what is there to do? Like how to involve more students here.
Okay, so a good example is how things evolved, let's say in the US. Uh, about 20, 30 years back, it wasn't a common knowledge that this kind of mathematical thinking would actually be helpful in any other area. So what changed? What changed is that a lot of mathematical machinery became important in Wall Street problems. All right. And then it became, then all of a sudden, people in engineering departments, they found that they didn't have qualified engineers. Even within the engineering faculty, there are people who want to do very theoretical stuff, and their interest is theoretical, and they couldn't find students that had the theoretical background. So some engineering professors, they very much uh, they like to have math students join their program because they're particularly well-trained math students. Then outside of science and engineering, you all of a sudden, law school, sometimes they prefer students doing quote unquote hard sciences because they find that those students have this ability to actually uh, dissect a problem and think methodically through the whole process. So this then there is demand from those departments. Also in medical school, they actually sometimes like students with backgrounds in undergraduate in math and physics and this kind of basic sciences. So what has happened is all of a sudden, the math is a very popular major in our department. It wasn't the case 30 years back. So part of this is driven by demand. The demand that you could, outside of teaching and outside of academia, which is, we always had this demand in these core things. Outside of this, there are all these other areas where people actually thought that mathematicians were needed, right? Now, in Bangladesh, among the employers or among the parents, there is not much of a understanding that math is actually a vital skill developing subject. And this has to change among employers. So there is a demand outside. I mean, right now, a lot of them are going to BCS and doing all these things. But outside of this government narrow areas, if there is a feeling that mathematicians could actually be useful in many different areas, so this will not happen overnight because the current crop of students who are trained in the way they have been trained, they probably do not have this wider vision that they could actually be helpful in many different areas. So this requires the quality of students coming into math to get better. And then at the same time, the employers and other people getting into the profession, the professors who are there, they need to be more inspiring. So that requires a much stronger group of people entering the profession. Because if you shortchange the, if you do not have uh, good enough people in the mathematics profession, then you're shortchanging the careers of engineers, of economists, of all these other areas, because they could have been trained much better quantitatively than they got. All the BUET engineers want to work in signal processing. They don't have any basic measure theory. All these machine learning algorithms, you require this idea of steepest descents and all these things, and you don't have this mathematical machinery. You only understand in a thing. You in a very, you could do research, but you'll have you there are certain parts of research which are you have to close it off because you don't have sufficient mathematics. So, sorry, all these things would not have. Yeah, just a sec. So all these different possibilities are foreclosed because you don't have a good enough mathematics training when you get out.
So, one final question to you is to all the Bangladeshis who are studying in Bangladesh and also abroad. As a Bangladeshi mathematician, what message do you want to convey to them?
Yeah. So keep your eyes open. Do not be so narrowly focused, even as you're doing something deeply, which requires, of course, narrow focus.
Mm,
You also keep in mind what else there is for you.
mm,
Keep in mind how things are connected. All right. So and be flexible in your thought process. What are you going to do, not only in the careers, but also in terms of what you learn, and that will serve you well.
Thank you so much, Professor, for giving me time. And it means a lot because a lot of audience will be watching it. Those who are young, those who are professionals, there's so much to learn. Either you're an economist or a policymaker or an academician or an industrialist, whatever. So this means a lot. And I just wanted to let you know that this episode would be broadcasted on YouTube. And also now we are on Spotify. So we can tune in to learn mathematics on Spotify. And yeah, thank you so much for giving me time and wish you all the best and keep inspiring us.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.